All right, so last time we talked about how to install Python through Anaconda, and then we talked about what is Notebook in general in Python. And we show how we can open up a Jupyter Lab or Jupyter Notebook on our computer. So now let's talk about basically in this video, I'm going to talk about the basics of Python, right? But before doing that, I want to show you a cheat sheet when you're navigating through the Jupyter Lab, it's going to help you a ton. Okay, so if you go to our machine learning folder, so it's in your GitHub account, so most probably you have something like this on your computer as well, ML USU Spring 2021. If you go to cheat sheets, then there is this Word document, which is Jupyter Notebook shortcuts, right? Uh, there are, well, of course, you don't need to necessarily memorize all of them, but there are some of them that I highlighted them in red triangles, right? If, for example, this one, this one, this one, right? Basically, what are these things? These are the most, at least these are the ones that I personally use them a lot. And I highly encourage you to at least know what they are. And over time, you will get used to it, okay? So and then for example, if you if you're working in Jupyter Labs, we can do all these things. I'm going to show a bunch of them over Jupyter Lab to you guys, but feel free to explore these shortcuts at your own pace. Okay, so let's quickly open up Jupyter Notebook or Jupyter Lab. It really doesn't matter. I personally prefer to work with Jupyter Lab. Okay, so I do command. And then again, I want to go to the directory, which I have my GitHub folder. So this is in my D directory. And then I can go to the folder of the machine learning. By the way, if you want to see what are the folders you have in any directory, you can do dir. You see a list of folders, right? So for example, I know we want to open up this one, so I can say cd and then start typing ml and then press tab. So when I do tab, it suggests me all the folders that start with ml, right? So I have a couple of them, so I do another tab. So then I can go to that folder. So now, right now, I'm in that specific folder. So I can go ahead and type Jupyter Lab now. Okay, now the Jupyter Lab is open. And then I can go to the classes, Python 3, Notebook, and we're going to start with Python Basics, which is our first Jupyter. Okay. Again, but before that, let me quickly show you how to use those keyboard shortcuts. So if I open up the test Python notebook, remember we created this one last time. So for example, the first cell was 1 + 1. I can run a cell by doing Control Enter or Shift Enter or Alt Enter. There's a difference between the three, and which you can look at the cheat sheet and see what's the difference. But I want to tell you a general thing, and that's so this thing that we create, we call it a cell. Do you see that there is this? My cursor is blinking here. So this is a cell, right? And cell has different types. It can be a code cell like this, or it can be a text cell. We call it markdown cell. And if you want to make a markdown cell, you have to press escape. And if you see, when I'm in a cell, the cursor is blinking. When I press escape, I go to the command mode, right? We call this one command mode. We call this one edit mode. So if I click in the cell, inside the cell, it's in the edit mode. If I'm inside the cell and press escape, I'm in the command mode, right? Now, if I go back to the cheat sheet, see, we have two types of shortcut keys. The first one is for command mode, so you have to press escape. And the second one is edit mode. You have to double click or click in the cell and be inside the cell when your cursor is blinking. Okay. Now, if I'm in the command mode, you see, if I press Y, it changed the cell to a code, right? If you want to code in Python, right? Python language. If I'm in the command mode and if I press M, letter M, it changed the cell to Markdown. So for those of you who are familiar with Markdown, so you know it's already, Markdown is already a documentation language. It's based on LaTeX, but if you don't know it, just think of it as a simple text, right? So for example, if I go back to this test notebook, imagine I want to make a new cell. So this is a new cell, and I want to make it the text cell, right? I press escape. I'm in a command mode now. Now I press M. If I press M, I want you to pay attention. This thing is going to go away, right? Now it's in the markdown cell. Can you see that? So here's a markdown cell. This is a code cell. So you can change them by just simply clicking on this thing and say code versus markdown as well. But I highly encourage you to learn how to use the shortcut keys. So if I do escape M, now it's in the markdown mode or text mode. Then I press enter, then I start typing. So this is a test. And I can do control enter, so it's run this cell. Okay, so this is a test. So this is a markdown, this is a text, this is a Python language, this is a code, right? So this is really important because imagine you're doing your homework or whatever, you want to add some documentation and for example, say that, okay, this is my answer to question 1, and then you want to make a new cell below, and here you want to start typing your code. So you have to say, okay, and 1 + 1, blah blah blah. You want to save it in an X variable and etc. Right? So this was basically what are cells and how we can use those shortcut keys. And again, the ones that are in the red squares, I really want you to learn them. So for example, you see there are 3 different version of running a cell. If you do Shift Enter, it runs the cell and select the cell below. If you do Control Enter, it only run that selected cell. If you do Alt Enter, it will run that selected cell and insert one below. Okay. So again, I just show you one of them, and then I want you to try out the other one. So if you see me, I'm navigating fast through the notebook. Don't be surprised, I'm not using my mouse. I'm just using the shortcut keys. So if you ever wonder how I'm inserting a new cell below, above, how I'm deleting a cell by pressing escape and double D, something like this, and how I'm undoing deleting a cell, I'm using escape plus C and etc. Right? Okay, and in the edit mode, these are the hosts. For example, if you want to do indentation, so you do control and then this thing above your enter, it's a close bracket, and then the control A, control Z. These are pretty standard ones. And if you want to add a comment in your Python code, you do hashtag or you do control \, right? So for example, if I'm in my Python, where is it? And here I want to add a comment, right? So I do either control \, or I just simply type hashtag, right? So this is a comment. Okay. So you can either make a comment like this or make a separate cell. So it's up to you. It's both of them works fine. But if of course, if your comment is a paragraph, I highly recommend to make it in a separate cell. Okay. All right. Now let's go to the Python basic file and try to review this one together. So I'm going to go ahead and close this navigation tab on the left by doing Control B. So now we have a full screen. If you want to launch your help, contextual helper as well, you can do Control I. Then I can make this contextual helper to the right side of my window. Okay, now I can play around with this thing. Okay, but for now, for this, I think for this, well, we're going to keep it very small. We'll see if you need it or not. Okay. Okay. As you can see, this entire big thing is one cell. If I double click on it, see, so this is how I generated this cell. So first of all, it's a markdown, and then I can add a reference to an HTML, and I can add a picture, and then I can do bullet points, enumerate like this. So if I want to do enumerates, the indentation is better. I can say that matters. So for example, if I do space like this, it's not going to make it enumerate. So I have to make a tab and make sure you see the coloring changes, right? These are some cosmetic things, and it's not necessary for you to know these things for the course, but I think it's good to know. This is a crash course, And then why not? You can learn it, right? So if I do Control Enter, it's going to run this cell. And basically, these are the ones that we're going to cover for this tutorial, right? So in this tutorial, we're going to see what are data types, numbers, strings, booleans, tuples, lists, dictionaries, and sets, right? And then we talk about comparison operators, if, else if, and then else statements, for loops, while loops, list comprehensions, functions, map, and filter. Okay. If you're familiar with coding in general, you have seen most of them, but there are some unique things to Python, like tuple, like dictionaries, or like list comprehensions. List comprehensions are super powerful in Python. I like working with them. Okay, so let's fly through the cells because this is relatively a long Python notebook. And then if you had any questions, just let me know, or one of my TAs in the classroom, or Google things up. You know, you have to learn how to Google code and troubleshoot your coding, right? Okay, so the first cell, and I'm gonna do Shift Enter or Control Enter to just run the cell and go to the next cell. So numbers, so data type, numbers, 3 plus 5, 8. So these are simply numbers, right? 2 the multiply through 6, 2 to the power of 3 is 8, right? And if you want to see where I am at, just look at this blue thing. So basically it says that what cell is being run, right? Okay, so if I go back to this cell, I want to make it clear that be careful in Python. Power is used with 2 stars, not hat. You know, in R we use hat, or some other languages we use hat to do power, but in Python it doesn't work like that. So this, if I do 2 hat 3, the answer is 1. So it's exclusive expression. Basically, it's give you back the binary part of a number, but it's really something you don't need to know about right now. But so if you want to, if you want to do power, make sure that you have 2 stars. It's a very common mistake that people make, and beginners make in Python. They put hats instead of 2 stars. If you want to do, for example, 5 divided by 2, we can do backslash, and then so it's 2.5. If I do actually 2 of these things, if I do 5 of these backslash 2, so it will give me the integer part of it, right? So we call this one floor division, okay? And I can look at the residuals. If I do 5 divided by 2, what's the residual? Of course, the residual is going to be 2. It's going to be 1, right? Then variable assignments. So for variable assignments, for example, I have a variable I want to save 2 inside this variable. I say, okay, my variable is equal to 2. So now I have a variable. So if I show that what is my variable now, I press enter. So the answer is going to be 2, not surprisingly, right? Then, for example, x is 2. I can define a y variable, say my variable plus x. So it's going to be 2 plus 2, right? Then the next one is a string. Okay. So if I start typing things in a cell, which is code, Python will not understand it, and it's going to complain, right? It says that, okay, it's an invalid syntax. Why? Because I'm typing in a string, I'm talking non-Python language to Python compiler, right? Python is going to complain, say that I don't understand what you're talking about. So either make it a string or make it a markdown, right? So if I can make it a markdown and then do Control Enter, or I can come back and then make it a code again. If I run it, it will complain. So how can I fix it? I have to put it in 2 quotations, right? Now, if I do that, Python understand that, okay, this is a string. All right, now let's play around with these strings and use some functions. So imagine I have a ID number, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. I have a name, the name is Pedram. Okay, now inside the ID is 1, 2, 3, 4. The name is Pedram. I'm going to print a string, right? And this is something very useful. I say that, okay, my ID number is, I use one of these curly brackets, right? And my name is a curly bracket. When I do dot format, and by the way, see, this contextual help, as soon as there's a function here, it's going to give you some documentation of the function. For example, this is a print function, and basically what are the features, right? Okay, so then at the end of this string, if I do dot format, so let me actually erase this one. If I do dots and press tab, okay, it tells you what you can do with this object of yours, right? So for example, I can capitalize it, I can case fold, center, and etc., right? So the one that we were using was format, right? So format is basically the function inside that. Inside this is string, right? So this is, for example, I can use a format and attach it to a string. So this is how we do things in object-oriented programming in Python specifically, right? So then I say format, and it's waiting for two inputs, ID and name. Why two inputs? Because I put two curly brackets here, one here and one here. The first input is going to be ID, the second input is going to be name, right? So if I press enter, control enter or shift enter, it says my ID number is 1234 and my name is Vedram. So if I change it to 56 and then name to PJ, of course, it's going to replace this ID with 56 and Vedram with PJ, right? So that's, well, let me actually run these two cells. So 56 and Vedram PJ, okay? So we can control Z and revert everything back to what it was. Okay, now let's say I have a string, I call it my string, and the string is hello world, and there's a space, I am learning hashtag machine learning, okay? And again, guys, if I go ahead, now I have an object, right? So if I do in Python, when you do dot and then press tab, you will see what you can do with that object, right? This is very common. We're going to use this dot method a lot, right? And then you can see, when you see there's this little f here, it stands for function. So these are all the functions that you can apply to your string, to your object. My object here turns out to be a string, right? So I can say is lower, and lots of them are straightforward, but if you didn't know, for example, what is index, so you can just Google it, or you can just press enter and then look at the contextual help, right? I encourage you to use a combination of this contextual help and Google, specifically use a Stack Overflow. It's going to be very helpful, okay? So for example, this function that we're going to use here, it's called lower, and it's going to make everything in lowercase. So here H is uppercase, I is uppercase. It's going to turn everything to a lowercase, right? So H is lowercase and all the letters, right? If I do upper, the other way around, right? If I do split, this is also a very useful function. It's going to split my string by space, right? So there's a space here, so split it, space here, and space here, and a space here, right? So if I do split, see, it's going to split my string by space. You can change the split, the way that's being split. For example, do not split by space, split by hashtag. So if I want to split by hashtag, okay, then you see, hello world, I'm learning. So this is one string. And split it by hashtag, the second one is ML. So guys, all these things that I put together for our Python crash course, eventually it's going to be used. Maybe some of them not for this course, but for machine learning, all of them are going to be used. For example, I don't know, you're doing sensitivity analysis. You're reading tweets, and you want to find for the hashtag gold, hashtag Bitcoin, things like that, right? So that's how we can split and basically narrow pick this the hashtag part, right? All right. Now, there is this in method in Python, which is very useful, and basically says that, what is our x actually? Let me remind myself, what is x? Okay, this is x. So our x is number 2. So up here, we define our x to be 2, right? So x is 2, and I want to see if 2 is in this list, 1, 2, 3, right? So the answer is going to be false. Oh, sorry, my bad. So this is a string, not an x. Okay, let me back it up. This is a string, because I'm using a quotation here. Is letter x in this list 1, 2, 3? So the answer is of course false. Then I say, if is letter x is in this list x, y, and z? Well, the answer is true, right? So we're going to use this in function and split and things like that. So again, remember, this is a crash course. I don't expect you, specifically if you don't have a good background in Python, I don't expect you to learn these things overnight or over a month, or even honestly over 6 months, right? it comes with practice. So don't put pressure on yourself. So for the purpose of the course, you will be able to manage how to get what I expect you out of the course. But the more you practice it, the better you'll learn it. But do not expect yourself to learn all these 7 Python notebooks in a month. Okay, you have to just practice it, practice, practice, practice. Okay, then Booleans. So and I added comments throughout the notebook. For those of you who are working with R as well, there are some specific differences between Python and R, which is sometimes confusing. So the ones that are more confusing, I added a comment. So for example, I said, unlike R, you cannot use T or true for Boolean true. So in Python, you have to only use true, T, capital T, and the rest of them are small. However, in R, you can do capital T or all of them capital letter. Okay. So if I do something like this in Python, it's going to complain, I don't understand what is T. But in R, it understands. So again, if you want to make sure that a variable is Boolean, so just call it capital T, and then the rest of them are small. So now if I look at X, X is true. False itself, so of course it's a false, right? So again, I cannot use F. If I do F, it's going to complain. I don't understand what is F, so you have to say false. Okay. The fourth type is tuples. So tuple is something unique to Python, and we use parentheses for tuple. So it means that, so let's have an object called a T. It's a tuple, and I have 1, 2, 3 numbers in that tuple. If I use parentheses, it's going to be automatically treated as tuple. If I use brackets, it's going to be lists, right? So it really does, it is important what you use, how you're defining your variables or your objects. So if I use parentheses, now it's going to be tuple. If I look at my tuple T, it says that, okay, there are parentheses, so I understand that it's a tuple 1, 2, 3, right? How we can extract one of specific elements from a tuple. So basically, it's very simple and straightforward. And it's, in most languages, it's the same in R, in MATLAB, in C, and but the indexing is different, right? So here in C language, like in Python language like C, the index starts from 0. So this means that the index for this object is 0, the index is 1, the index is 2, right? So for example, if I want to extract the first element, the index is 0. So that's why, so for extraction in general, we use brackets. So I type T, this is my object, right? If I do bracket, okay, it's waiting for some information. Which index do you want to get? I say index 0. Index 0 is the first element, okay? So it's 1. If I say index 2, what do you think I get? Yes, number 3, because 0, 1, 2. This is index number 2, okay? Okay. So again, if this is the first time that you're seeing Python or C programming in general, so this at the beginning, it's going to be a little strange. You think that, okay, why the index doesn't start from 1 like R? But in Python, the index starts from 0. Just be aware of that, okay? All right, so why do we use tuple somewhere? No, why do we need to define something like tuple? Because tuples are immutable. What it means is that you cannot assign some new variables to them, right? So for example, if I say that, okay, go ahead and change the first element or index 0 to number 10, it's going to complain. It says that tuple objects does not support item assignments. So where do you think we can use it? Imagine you write a model and you want to write a function inside that model, and you want to make sure that the user is not able to change your parameters, right? Okay, if you want to fix the parameters and if you want to make sure that they are immutable, you have to make them, have to define them as a tuple. This way, if the user wants to change the parameter value, they cannot, okay? All right, the next one is list. So list is something that we're going to use a ton for machine learning. So I encourage you to learn the specific functions out of a list very, very carefully. So in order to make a list, we are going to use bracket, okay? And again, for our users, so it's the same as if I use list function in R. But in Python, it's simply use a bracket, right? If I do bracket 1, 2, 3, so it's a list, I can define a list. That list can be a combination of a string, a number, a list itself, and a tuple, right? So you see, this is a list of lists. My list is literally a list of lists, right? So the first element is hello world, it's a string. The second element is an integer. The third element is a list, which is a combination of a string and integer. The fourth element is a tuple, right? So you can have a list of lists in a list, right? Notice that the integers 1 and 3 in the list and the tuple are not coerced into string. So this is something that, again, it's a little technical, but it is good to know that when I do a list of 1, 2, 3, and one of them is a string, this is not going to be coerced. 1 and 3 are not going to be coerced into a string. They're going to be remain integer. Unlike when you do a vector in R, it's going to coerce them into strings. Okay. All right. Extracting elements from a list. This is important. So give me the first. Let me show you. Remind you what was my list. I start typing my list, and again, guys, this is my list. And if I do dot tab, you see all the functions that I can apply to that list, right? I can append, I can clear, I can copy, I can count, I can extend, and etc. Okay. We're going to talk about the more useful ones, but feel free to explore all of them. Okay, so this is our list, and I want to extract the first element. So what is the answer? My word. I want to extract, what is this one? Second element or third element? There you go, third element, right? Because the index starts from 0. 0, 1, 2, it's the third element. So 0, 1, 2. So the third element is going to be this whole list, right? Now, from this whole list, I want to extract the first element of that sublist, right? So this is, if I look at this one, if I run this line, it's a list itself, right? If I want to extract the first element of this sublist, I say, okay, give me the, let's say I want to extract the second element. So I have to use the index equal to 1, okay? Then let's say I want to extract the last element, right? So the last element is 3. In Python, if I do -1, it's going to give me the last element. It's completely different than R. So here's a big distinction between the two. In R is going to, well, let's keep it to Python. And I can extract a range of a list, right? So remember, my list was this. This is my list. If I want to say, okay, give me the second element to the, okay, or from index 1 to the index 3 and not including index 3, right? So this is basically how we do that. It says that, okay, give me from my list, give me index 1, sorry, through index 3, not including index 3. So it's going to be index 1 and index 2. Index 1 is the second element. Index 2 is the third element. Second element, third element. So the answer is going to be 100 and down the other one, right? So you see, that's it. Again, play around with these things. I'm not, so the rest of them, just make sure that you read through the rest of them. It's really straightforward. Okay. All right. Now let's talk about adding elements to a list. Okay, one of the functions that we can use is append function. This is very useful. We're going to join this function in a for loop, and later on we're going to use this in some of our notebooks throughout the semester. So I'm going to say that let's actually look at the list. Eventually, guys, if I scroll down here, I added a new. I said, okay, replace the first element to be new variable. Let me actually do that because we want to make sure that our list is the same. See, now my list changed. The first element is replaced by new variable, right? It used to be hello world, and I replaced that hello world with new variable. Remember, if I wanted to do the same with tuples, I was not able because tuples are not immutable, but lists are mutable. All right. Okay, now this is my list, right? Now, if I want to add a new string to the end of my list, I simply use the append function. And then look at my list. Okay, the new string is added to the end of my list, right? Okay, then in order to remove elements from a list, there are 3 different functions we can use, 4 actually. There's clear, pop, remove, and delete. Okay. So when you see we have parentheses after function, it means that, this is a function that we can apply to an object. And when you see there is no parentheses, basically these are modules, right? So there's a slight difference between the function and module, but basically they're going to do the same thing. They're waiting for an input and do something to that input and return an output, right? Now let's make a copy of our list. Remember my list. This is my list, and I'm going to make 4 copies of that, right? So I call it L1, L2, L3, L4. Then copy them. Why do I copy them? I say my list copy because I want to make changes to this L1, and when I make those changes to L1, I don't want that change to be applied to my list. I say that, okay, take my list, make a copy out of that, and then save it into L1. This way, now if I change L1, it's not going to affect my list. If I do not use this copy and run this line, then down the road, if I make any changes to L1, that change is going to be applied to my list. So this is not something that I want to do. I want to make sure that my original list is untouched, and then I can play around with the rest of them. So this is something that we do a lot, for the course. So for example, we are making a data frame. I want to make sure that the original data frame is not changed. So we're going to use the copy function. Okay. Now, if I look at my list number 1, so of course, not surprisingly, it's a copy of my list, and these are the inputs. And now look at that. I can say clear. It's going to remove all the items. So if I do L1 clear, it's going to remove all items. Again, guys, if I do L1 dot tab, these are all the functions that I can use. Let's do clear, open close paren. And as you can see in the contextual help, it's going to remove all items, right? Now, if I look at my L1 again, nothing. Okay. Now, let's look at L2. L2 is going to be the same thing, right? So in order to make sure that we can see the inside of L2, so this is L2. And now I'm going to use pop function. So pop is going to remove an item by index and get its value back, right? So by default, you see the default index is -1. It says that the last item. So by default, it's going to pop out the last item and then show it to you. So if I, for example, if I don't put anything here, if the index is nothing, by default, it's going to grab this last item and drop it from your list too. Let's go ahead and do that. See, the last item is new string. Now, if I look at my L2, again, the last item is not going to be there, right? If I rerun this line now, again from L2, so this is my L2 now, right? If I drop, let's say, the first element, so this is the first element, index is 0, right? What is first element? New variable. Now, if I look at the L2 again, nothing is here, right? So let's make sure that I revert them back to what they are, because when you're reading them, you're not confused. Okay, now let's look at our L3. Again, L3 is our original list, something like this, right? We're going to use remove function. So what's the difference between remove and pop? Pop is going to pop out the variable, whatever, the value in that object by index. Remove is going to do it by value. You want to say that, okay, I want to remove some specific value from L3. Okay, remove new string for me. Okay, look at the L3. There is no new string in L3. And then finally, so this is the one that's going to be a lot. Well, it depends. So I personally prefer to use del function. Again, this is this is slightly different than the dot function open close parentheses. So when you use something like this, you have to pass the inputs in front of it, right? So it says that delete what? L4, the first element, right? So this is, if I read the del is going to remove items by index or a slice, right? So slice means that, let's say, let's remove these two, a range of indexes for me, right? Indices for me, right? So for example, I can do, okay, in L4, let me actually show what is L4. Oh, sorry, my left click doesn't work properly. All right, so the L4 is this. Let's say remove the first element. So remove the first element. Now I can say from this new L4, remove elements, guys, remember, number 2. So this is element number 2. The index is 1. So element number 2 to the end. And I do column and nothing, it's to the end. Okay. So then what is left? Only the first element. Okay. The next type is dictionaries. So dictionaries are very helpful in Python. And what are they? Remember, for tuples, we use parentheses. For lists, we use brackets. For dictionaries, we use curly brackets. Okay. So, yes, or bases, braces, sorry, braces and columns. So dictionary, we can define a dictionary, and there are two things that we have to remember from the dictionaries. One is the key, and the other one is item, the value. So for example, I make a new dictionary, right? And the keys are not necessarily, these are not indices, right? So basically, let's make a dictionary. I call it, okay, this is the key one for dictionary. The value in that key one is, it's a string of value 1. Key 2 is the second element in my dictionary, and the value is a list. The value can be a tuple, can be a list, can be anything, right? Now, this dictionary has two names for its indices, right? So we're not using index, we're using what's called the keys, right? So key 1, key 2, you can give it any name, right? So here I just call it key 1 and key 2, right? And then you'd use column and then the value of key 1, the value of key 2. Okay, so let's run this. Now, if I look at my dictionary now, it says that, okay, your dictionary has 2 keys. The name of the keys happen to be key 1 and key 2, and 2 values. This is a value, which is a string, and this is a value, which is a list, right? Now, if I want to extract information from a dictionary, I cannot pass an index number. So I cannot say that, okay, this is the second element of my dictionary. You do not expect to get back this one. You will get an error, right? If you want to get back this list, you have to pass the key. It's key. So it's the key was, the name of the key was key 2, right? So if I say, okay, from my dictionary, give me back the key 2, 1, 2, 3. Give me back the key 2, the third element, 1, 2, 3. So it's going to be number 3. If you want to see what are the keys in your dictionary, you use the key function. So these are, you have key 1, key 2. If you want to see what are the items in your dictionary, you use the items function. Again, these are really straightforward. So basically it tells you what are the keys and the values. So we call them items, right? If you want to see the values, not surprisingly, you use the value function. So the value of key 1 is a string value 1. The value of key 2 is a list of 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, the next one is sets. So sets are, if you look at the sets, we're using braces, and do not confuse them with dictionaries. So if I use braces without using column, if I use column, it's expecting you to add a dictionary, right? So for example, if I do something like this, it's going to be dictionary. But if I don't use a column, it's going to be a set, right? And set basically is a collection of unique elements, right? So for example, I can either use the braces or use a set function, and both of them works in Python. So if I do set of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, and etc., it's going to return the unique elements, right? So if I run this, the answer is going to be 1, 2, 3. Or if I use the set function, set and pass a list, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Let's say my set is 1, 2, 3. I'm going to remove the number 2 from it. Okay. It's going to give you back the 1 and 3, right? Guys, remember, this is not index. This is not bracket. This is, I'm removing an element from that set. If I want to add number 4, so this is adding number 4. Comparison operators cannot be easier. Basically, you're asking type on Python. If 2 is greater than 1, true. If 2 is less than 1, false. If 4 is less than or equal to 4, true. If 2 is equal to 4, this is important, guys. You have to use 2 equal sign. The answer is 2. If by is equal to by, it's case sensitive. So all of them are cap letters, so it's true. If one of them is small letter, the other one cap letter, the answer is false. This is maybe for some of you guys is new. It's basically not equal. Is by not equal to cell? The answer is true, right? They're not equal. If you want to use and or in Python, you simply use letters, the word and or. So basically, I want to say, okay, if 1 is greater than 2 and 2 is greater than 3, then what's the output? So 1 is greater than 2, the answer is no. So if I use AND function, the answer is going to be false. But or 1 is greater than 2, no. Or 2 is less than 3, yes. So basically true or false, the answer is true. Or false or true, the answer is true, right? Then I want to say, look at that or. If you can do multiple things, right? If 1 is equal to 2, of course no. Or 2 is equal to 3, of course no. Or 4 is equal to 4, of course yes. So no, no, yes, the answer is going to be yes. Okay. Then let's look at if, else if, and else statements. In Python, we don't write else. Just remember, it's elif. If, elif, and else. And in Python, in general, we do if, you put your condition, and then column action. In R, we put if, open close parenthesis, open close bracket. So this is important. I want you to remember what's the difference between Python and R, because in many languages we use something like this. In many languages we use something like this. So Python C, this is something like this. Okay. If, simply your condition, column, what to do with that condition. That's it. Okay. Okay, let's go over if. Basically, it says that if 1 is less than 2, if that statement is true, do something. Print condition is true. Okay, then if 1 is less than 2, do this. Otherwise, do this. So what's the answer to this one? It's going to be condition is true because 1 is less than 2. Now, we want to say if 1 is greater than 2, the answer is false, right? So it's going to say, okay, this is not correct. So else, what should I do? Print condition is false. Okay. Now, let's see what is elif. This is a nested if, right? We say if 1 is equal to 2, the answer is no. Okay, it's going to do the next line. Else if 3 is equal to 3, yes. So print the second condition is true. So the answer is going to be this one. Else, if neither of them is true, so print last condition is true. So the answer to this one is going to be the second condition is true, right? The first condition is false, second condition is true, so the answer is going to be second condition is true. All right, the next one is for. So let's see what are for loops. Again, from here it's going to be consistent in Python. So for example, we had if, condition, column, and what to do. For the same. For condition, for I in a sequence, for item in a sequence, column, do something. Okay. So let's actually introduce one new function. This is a useful one. It's called range, right? So range is a function that if you call a list out of that function, it's going to return a list to you. So for example, if I do list range 5, it says, okay, give me the first 5 indices from, so it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So it's going to give you basically 5 indices, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to say for items in this range of 5. So I already know that what are the items in this range. This is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Print item. Okay. I can say I can change, I can play around with the attribute of this range function. If I click on this range, you see what are the attributes. You can have, there are, well, this is not the best documentation, I believe. Again, you can Google it, but basically what we have here is basically says that, okay, from number 4 to number 10, not including 10. Remember, not including 5. From number 4 to number 10, with the steps of 2, print item. So what is it? 4, 6, 8. Okay. And there's some concepts called tuple unpacking, and we can unpack a tuple, and this is something useful that later on you may use it in the machine learning course. And so for example, I have a list of tuples, right? How do I say that a list of tuple? A list of tuples, right? So tuple is parentheses, list is bracket, right? So list of tuples, so it has 3 tuples in it, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, this is something what we call tuple unpacking. I want to unpack the elements in these tuples. I say, okay, there are 2 elements. It can be A, B, you can call it anything. Like you can call it item 1, item 2, value 1, value 2. But for convenience, I just call them A, B. I say for A, B in this X. What is X? It's a list of tuples. And so Python is going to understand that your values in X has two elements, 1 and 2. So I call it A and B. Say, okay, for A and B in X, print first element is and second element is, and then use dot format A and B, right? So it's going to be the first element is 1, second element is 2, first element is 3, second element is 4, first element is 5, second element is 6. Okay. Then there is this enumerate function that we can use in our for loops, right? Sometimes we want to deal with iterators, and we also want to keep track of the counter of that iteration, right? So let me give you an example. Imagine I have a list of groceries, right? It's item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4, item 5. And I want to see what is the counter number for item 3, for item 4, and item 5. So here, maybe this example is not the best one. If I replace them with apple, banana, cheese, and etc., it makes more sense. So for example, cheese is the counter for cheese is 3, the counter for apple is 1, the counter for item is whatever, right? So if I do list enumerate y, so this enumerate is a function, I want to see what is inside that function, right? So it says that, okay, your item 1, the index is 0. Your item 2, the index is 1. Item 3, the counter or index is 2, and etc. Right? If you want to change the beginning of that counter, for example, if you want to say enumerate, let's change the counter start from 1. So I can say start from 1. You can change that to anything, right? 1, 2, 3. Start from 100. 100, 101, 102, and etc. Does that make sense? So let's erase this. Let's go back to now that I know what is enumerate doing. Basically, enumerate is making my the elements inside the list to a tuple of counter, you see, and the value, counter and the value. Now I can do tuple unpacking. So counter the value. So let's tuple unpack this enumerate y and print counter an item. Okay, there you go. 0, item 1, 1, item 2, and etc. So for example, if I want to change the start, I can say something like this: 1, item 2, item 3. And again, you can think of it as stocks, you know, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon. You want to see what is the counter number. Sometimes throughout the semester, we're going to use this enumerate function. Guys, remember, these Jupyter notebooks that I put together, you know, comes with experience. You know, when I was doing my own codings, and if I realize that, okay, this is something that I'm constantly Googling, right? So why do I not keep it in my own notebook? And whenever I forget things, I can refer back to this notebook. So again, I'm emphasizing it. Do not expect yourself to learn these things overnight or over a month, right? Just keep practicing, okay? But don't I don't know, don't put yourself, don't give yourself a hard time. The next one is while loops. So again, while condition, and then do something for me, comma. Okay, for while loop, we have to set a counter, right? So let's say the count number is equal to 1. We say if, as long as the count is less than or equal to 4, do something for me, okay? And then at the end of it, I have to make sure that I add the counter. So this is equivalent to count is equal to count plus 1. I have to make add a number to a counter, because to make sure that this while loop is going to be breaked at some point, right? So it's going to, okay, print count is 1, go to the next one. Is 1 less than is equal to 4? Yes. So 1 plus 1, 2. 2 is less than 4? Yes. 2 plus 1, 3. 3 is less than 4? Yes. So 3 plus 1, 4. 4 is less than or equal to 4? Yes. And then count is equal to 5. 5 is less than 4. The answer is no. It's going to break the while. Okay. So that's why we only see 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So we're almost at the end of this lengthy Python basics, and this is going to be the longest one. So the rest of them is going to be shorter one. Okay. But I want to end this Python basics with something not necessarily basics, right? So this list comprehension is something super useful and powerful in Python, okay? Basically, we use it for conditional mutation. So let me explain myself what I mean by that. Imagine I have a list of x, and x is simply 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Then I'm going to go ahead and make a, let's say the goal is to uh, make all the elements of this list to the power of 2 and add number 1 to that, right? You want to apply a function to every single of these elements, right? So for some reason, okay, and we will see that reason. So for example, you're using, I don't know, you're looking at the columns of a table and you want to report them instead of percentage, you want to report them, for example, using decimal numbers, things like that. Or no, we have lots of examples throughout the semester that we'll see what's the application of list comprehension. But that was just one example, right? You want to mutate an entire column, yeah, based on some function, right? So let's say I want to change all these values. For example, I want to make them to the power of 2 and then add number 1 to them, right? So 1 to the power of 2 is 1 plus 1. The answer is 2. Let's, for example, this one, 5 to the power of 2 is 25 plus 1 is 26. Let's see how can I do that, right? Imagine, I will do it the hard way first, right? So what is the hard way? I'm going to say, okay, make a list. My list is going to be empty, right? This is an empty list. And then for I in X, what is X? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My list is going to be keep adding as long as it is in this for loop, right? So append, add something to that. What is that something? Your index, your I to the power of 2 plus 1. So it's going to, if I is equal to 1, 1 to the power of 2 plus 1. Then add it to your list, right? Then print my list, right? So this is, if I wanted to apply that function to this list, this is the hard way of doing that, right? So this is a hard way. And guys, this is a very simplistic function. Of course, if I wanted to do that, I could go ahead and simply say, okay, x to the power of 2 plus 1, I get the answer. But sometimes you want to apply some specific function, right? You want to apply some customized function, which you need to do it this way, right? So that was the hard way. What is the easier? So again, I hope that you understand the output. So the output is take each element to the power of 2 and add 1. 4 to the power of 2, 16, add 1, 17. Okay, so this is for this one. Now let's do it all in one line. So this is the beauty of list comprehension. So for list comprehension, let me actually make a new. We have to say, okay, we want to make a list at the end of the day. Remember, the goal is to transfer this list to a new list. So that's why I have to say make a list, right? Use brackets. And I say, what do you want to do with that list? I'm going to say that, you know what? The name can be anything. It can be Z, Y, Z, whatever. Let me just use another one. Say, okay, Y, take an element. That element is Y. Make it to the power of 2. Then add number 1, right? And guys, you don't need to put a parenthesis here because, I hope that you have done enough programming, you know that power is prioritized to summation. So if I do it or not, it's going to make no difference. Okay, so that, okay, take Y, make it to the power of 2 and add number 1. And now you have to define what is your Y. You say, okay, for Y in range of 1 and 6. So why 1 and 6? Because I want to replicate this 1 through 5, right? Not including 6 and starting from 1. Now, if I run this line, see, I did it in one line. Instead of doing it a for loop, making a list and append things, I did it in one simple line. This is very, very powerful. And this is, guys, remember, this is just a name. It can be anything. It can be anything nonsense or anything maybe strange. I can call it pedram, right? For just do pedram to the power of 2 plus 1 for what? For pedram in this range. So I get the same answer. Okay, don't be confused that this is X and this must be X. No, maybe I should have used another. So I'm in the final version, I'm going to put Y instead of the X. So, okay, so let's drop this one. Let's call it Y. Let's call it Y. And in R, this is a family of apply functions. But again, if you're not interested in R, that's a separate thing. So this list compression is super powerful. We're going to use it a lot later on. Okay. I know this is becoming a lengthy one, but just bear with me. I promise you this notebook is going to be something that saves you a ton of time. in terms of searching things online. So functions. Now let's define my own function. I'm gonna go ahead and define my own function by typing def. And actually, guys, if I want to do it from scratch, as soon as you type def, the color is going to change, right? Because this is reserved, right? Then you put your function. For example, I say, okay, I want to make a function called epidrom, right? And then I want to say, what are the inputs of that function? The input, let's say it's x. If I do not pass any default number, so it's not going, the default number is going to be NA, right? But I can say, okay, the default number, let's pass the default number 10 to that, right? And then I say, what do you want to do with that? Make sure when you do column and press enter, the indent matters, right? So if I start typing here, let's say print x plus 10, I'm going to get an error because the indented block is wrong, right? So if I have to make sure that either you press enter here, automatically it's going to be indented, or if you forgot to do that, just you can do press tab or control this, where is it? Indentation, this one, control and then right bracket, okay. All right, now this function is going to work. So what is this function? The name of the function is epidrom. It says that the input, you have to give it an input. Let's not give it a default value. We'll have to give it an x. Whatever that x, the output is going to be print x plus 10. So let's run this line. Now I have a function, right? Now, as soon as I start typing epidrom, look at that. I want you to pay attention to this contextual help. You know, if I do not define this function, and when I type epidrom, it doesn't understand anything. But if I type epidrom and I have defined this function, you see it says that it's a function, but there is no documentation. If you wanted to add some documentation, you put 3 of these quotations. Oops, sorry. By default, it add 1 of them. And then you say, okay, this is my function to add number 10 to your number. And then you have to close this. Okay, the coloring really matters, guys. You know, if I do 1 less, so it's going to complain, right? So you have to make sure that it's 3 of them. Okay. Now, if I run epidrom function, look at that. You know, there's a documentation here. This is my function to add number 10 to your number, right? Now, if I open close parenthesis, it's waiting for an input. So it only has 1 input. So let's say I add 5. So what is the output? It's going to be 15. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, if I do not put anything, I'll get an error because it says that this function epidrom is missing 1 required argument, x. So that's why most of the time, the function that they're going to use in machine learning, the main features has some default values, right? So for example, if I change the default value to 0, then now if I don't pass anything, it's not going to complain because it knows that the default value of x is 0. And if you add it to 10, you get a 10. Okay, are we good? All right, so let me erase this function. Now let's go back here. So I call the function, call it my function. And now I can see what is inside my function. Basically, the type is a function. And then if I don't pass anything, the default is 0. If I pass 10, the answer is going to be 12. Okay. Then finally, what is map and filter? Again, these 2 functions are super helpful functions as well. The idea is to map a function to a list, filter a function to a list, right? So we have to use filter and then pass a function into it, map, pass a function into it. And most of the time, that function that you're passing to the map and filter is a customized function, okay? Or is a function that you're not going to use it through the rest of your notebook. You want to make it temporary, let's say anonymous function, and you want to use it only in 1 line. So you don't want to define my function number 1, my function number 2, my function number 3 throughout your code, right? These are anonymous functions that you're going to use it only 1 time. So in order to do that, there is this Lambda expression in Python, which is very helpful. Okay, so let's see what is Lambda expression. And guys, I understand that this is not Python basics anymore. So, but you're going to need them for the semester. Just bear with me. So let's see what is Lambda expression. Okay, we want to define, let's say I have a function, I call it power, right? Just for sake of argument, I call it power. I know that this is already the, let's call it power 3. Yeah, let's call it power 3. I have a function, I call it power 3, and it says that, okay, take my x, whatever x is, make it to the power of 3, right? Now, if I say power, what is the input? 2, so it's going to say take 2 to the power of 3, right? 2 to the power of 3. Oops, sorry. I have to call it power 3, right? Power 3. Put 2 to the power of 3, it's 8, right? So I could do it this way. But if I want to do it this way, then I have defined a power 3 function somewhere in the memory of my computer. I don't want to do that, right? Because from now on, I'm not going to use this power 3 for the rest of my code. I just wanted to use it only once. If you wanted to use it only once, there's this Lambda expression, we call it anonymous function, that you could have used, right? So the way that it works is like this. You have to type in, let me actually make a new cell. You have to type in Lambda. And again, the color is going to change because it is reserved. And it's a function. The input of a function is x. What do you want to do with that? Make it to the power of 3. That's simple. This simple line is the same as defining a new function. Again, maybe you say that, okay, here's 2 lines, here's 1 line. What's the difference? You know, believe me and trust me, this Lambda expression is going to help us a lot of coding later on. Okay. All right. So basically, this is going to do the same job, right? So now let's apply them. So imagine I have a sequence from 1 to 3. If I look at my sequence, it's 1, 2, 3. Now, if I want to map this power 3 function. Let me actually change it to the sequence, right? It says that take 1, make it to the power of 3. Take 2, make it to the power of 3. Take 3, make it to the power of 3. And then give me back the output, right? Guys, the reason that I have to write the list here, if I don't do that, if I just use map and a function, Python is going to tell you that, okay, it's a map. It doesn't tell you what's inside. If you want to see what's inside, you have to say, okay, list that thing for me. Okay, so 1, 8, 27. So now, instead of defining this power 3 function somewhere in the code up there, you want to say that, okay, make an anonymous function, use it once, and that's it. So I'm going to say that map this anonymous function, which is to the power of 3, to this range, 1, 2, 4. The answer is going to be exactly the same. Okay. So this is map. We can do filter. So for example, I can say filter. So this, now you're going to see how beautiful this Lambda expression is going to work. So I'm going to say filter based on what function? If x is greater than 3 in this range, right? So filter only those numbers for me. What is range 10? 0, 1, 2, 3, up to 9, not including 10, right? So give me the ones that are greater than 3. Here's the output. We did it all in one line. So this is very powerful. Let's look at a more practical example. So for example, we have a list of stocks. We wanted, this is something we do for the course. If we wanted, I don't know, we want to read the data for Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and Tesla. And basically, let's play with them. For example, we want to see if the stock in this list, the list of stocks, start with the letter A. Okay, so this is not an easy question. You know, if you're being interviewed and say that, okay, well, when I say not easy, not relatively, because that's the simplest question in Python, right? But just hope you understand my point. You have to, if you want to do it from scratch, so you have to write it, define a function, and they say that in that function, define an if, right, inside that function. So already your function has 2 lines, and then return a value has 3 lines, and then print it, you have 4 lines, right? So instead of having it, and then later on, you have to use that function in the map and lambda expression. So in order to save all those trouble, you can do it in 1 line. That's the power of lambda expression, and which is when it's applied to map and filter function. Look at that. I'm going to say that, well, actually, let me make it from scratch. I'm going to say that, okay, first of all, I have a function lambda, And that function, guys, remember this x can be anything, can be my name, can be your name, can be anything, as long as there's no space, right? So it can be something like this. As long as there's no space, it's fine. But if you put a space, it's going to complain. Okay. So let's say this is my function. I'm going to say that the function has take x and the first element of the x. If x is a string, the first element is going to be first letter. If x is a list, the first element is going to be first item, right? So the first element, we're going to check if it is equal to a, capital letter A, right? So is this clear what this function is doing for us? Now I'm going to say, okay, map this function, which is basically checking if the first letter is A. You want to map it to what? Map it to stocks, because this is a list, and then give me the result. Give me the result. So what is it? True, false, true, false. Why? Because Apple is start with A, and Microsoft no, Amazon yes, Tesla no. So that's the answer, right? So let's look at another example. Let's say we want to select only the stocks that start with the letter A and ends with L. So you can see, check if X, the first letter is A, and the last letter is L. Where? In the stocks. And we can do filter function, right? We want to only filter those things, right? If I do map, what's the difference? If I do map, oops, sorry. If I do map, it's just going to tell me true, false, right? So the answer is going to be true, false, 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 false. True, false, 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 right? So if I'm a filter, it's going to return the apple only for me. Okay. And you can also pass multiple arguments to map function. So using a Lambda expression. So imagine I have X and Y. I say, okay, the inputs of my anonymous function is going to be two inputs, X and Y. What do you want me to do with them? Just add them to what? And apply this function to what? I have to pass two elements now, right? So the first one is a list of two. The second one is a list of two numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what's the output? 1 plus 3, 4. 2 plus 4, 6. All right. I know it was a lengthy one, but just keep practicing and do it at your own pace. Okay, do not rush through it. You don't need to know all these things. You don't need to memorize these things for doing homeworks. So if you're stuck when you're doing homework, you can come back to these things. Do not memorize anything, guys, right? It's just not going to work. Memorizing is not going to work. You have to practice it. Okay, so that was our first one. We are going to, let me close this one. So I'm going to save, we made some changes here. I'm going to save this and push it to my repository. Oops, sorry. Oopsie. Push it to the repository, and hopefully you will see the latest version on the repository. Okay, so until then, see you in the next one.